Welcome back to Breaking Down Storage Tech. Today we're breaking down a 2 chest items, 1 box item hybrid haul by Derwombat. So let's get straight into it. So what the system is you have access to 3 different items or 6 different items per slice, and you have access to 1 item that's bulk storage with shulker boxes. Then the one above will just be loose items, and the one above that is also loose items. Now, I believe this is the same UI as they use in the SciCraft server, but don't quote me on that. So how this system achieves that is it has 2 main filter lines right here and here, and it has 1 box loader with a filter line up here, and it shoots the item down. And then underneath you also have a box display, which is quite cool, and it is a smart box display. What makes it smart, or what is a smart box display? Well, basically it will replenish itself, and if you get items in this chest right here, or if, for example, if this box right here isn't placed and it gets items in this chest right here, it will run the system and place the box as soon as you get an item, which is just convenient instead of having a startup switch like most systems. So where does this all get started? Well, I think we'll start with this middle bit right here, which is just the 2 simple single filters. These both use SSI or S signal strength independent filters, where you have the item, or it's actually not set up like here, but if I just quickly set this up, I'll just show you how you would fill this up. So I get a stack of 16, and then I just drag across like this. This is why I really like SSI filters as well, is because they're so easy to set up, and you'd have your filter here. In this case, just gray concrete will work. Now, what happens here is the items will go across this line. Now this is a bit unique. It will align slightly more onto the hoppers while still being on the ice, because we want the water on top of the hoppers to push it along, but we'll have ice every 2 blocks like so, and that way it can still keep a decent amount of speed when going past. Now this changes over here, where it uses just 2 ice blocks and it goes across the ice blocks and aligns over the hopper, but you basically get the same thing. Now what'll happen is when an item makes its way into this hopper right here, this comparator will power, and it will overpower into this redstone wire right here, turning off this redstone line and turning off this bottom hopper, or unlocking this bottom hopper, allowing items to go straight down into this chest right here. As you can see, if I take a 16 right here, it will unlock, items will start going through until this gets back all the way down to 2, or 1 in this case, it doesn't really, and then you have all the items here. Now the same thing happens over here, using exactly the same filter, except the hopper is more swapped sides, and the ice is right here, and basically the exact same thing, and it goes straight down through all these hoppers and barrels into this chest right here. Now on the B slice, this is just a alternate SSI signal which you can use, and it basically goes onto this line and down here, and on this side it goes up, turns off this redstone torch, and goes down. You can mix and match these however you want, as long as you don't have the same slice, and that's what makes it signal strength independent. This slice can be overfilled and overflowed this line right here, and it won't affect any of this slice. That's why SSI filters are so good. And that basically takes care of these 2 items, apart from the hopper locking. So the hopper locking is really simple. Up here, it's just a block that powers these 2 redstone dust right here, which will power the neighboring ice block as well, and that locks these 2 hoppers, this hopper from the redstone dust and this hopper right here, but through the block which it's powering, and then you use a repeater to continue and power this block with the same signal. This one's a little bit more expansive. You have a single signal right here which powers these 2 dusts right here, which go to these 2 target blocks, which will continue the signal and are used to redirect the redstone, which basically allows this redstone dust right here to power all of these 4 repeaters by going into them. Now what happens then is it will power these barrels right here, which will lock these 2 hoppers above them, as well as powering this repeater, which will push down this redstone block, locking this hopper, as well as powering this, which will power this barrel right here, locking these 2 hoppers. And the same on the other side, except it powers a repeater and locks the sticky piston through quasi connectivity, and does the exact same thing. Now the repeater here is to continue the signal along with as a direct input, like this lever right here, and the same thing, or the same target block trick is used over here to power these barrels right here, which will lock these 2 hoppers, as well as power through and lock this hopper right here. And that basically locks all of the hoppers for the SSI slices. The SSI slices. Now let's get into here. This uses the same SSI filtering as the top right there, including the ice, and yeah, pretty much the same thing until you get to this dropper right here. This is where things start to get a little bit different. This is a box loader. It will load a shulker box full of items and make sure that it's full, so it doesn't matter if I leave even ignore the firing or here like this, doesn't matter, won't do it until it reaches that one block over here. So how does it do it? Well, basically it powers this comparator right here, which sends its signal to this redstone dust. This redstone dust is currently always at 14 power because of this redstone dust right here, which is at 15 coming from this redstone block. So because it's 1 over, so it always makes sure that it's at 14. Now, how this detects a signal is basically it powers this redstone wire right here when it gets a full signal strength. So when this container is completely full, then this comparator will output a signal strength of 15, overpowering this and causing an update that this observer can now read. Once it reads this observer will do a lot of things, sending signals in this direction and this direction. In this direction, what happens is it powers this repeater right here, moving this redstone block out of the way by powering the sticky piston, which unlocks this bottom line, which unlocks this item hopper right here, which will be for the shulker box when it makes its way down. Now, what happens when it powers is it also powers this dropper right here, which shoots it into the snow block to go down. And we'll talk about that in a second. What also happens is it will power this repeater right here. By powering this repeater, it will power this block or power this repeater here, which will unpower this redstone torch, unlocking this item hopper, which will allow the shulker box to go through. The reason we lock it right now is so that items in this shulker box don't get filtered out or pulled out while we're still trying to fill the box. And what also happens is it powers this block, which will power this sticky piston, shoving this entire line up. And by shoving this entire line of this piston and this white concrete powder up is we break off the signal to this redstone comparator, so it goes back to default. What also happens is we move the piston in a position to where it can break the shulker box. Now, how we power that is quite interesting. When this signal or the piston moves up, it will stop this white concrete powder from allowing the comparator to take a readout from the shulker box, so it'll power off, which will cause this note block right here to power off, which will cause this observer to read it and as no longer being powered. So it will send a signal through this observer and then power this block, which will power this piston, but it won't actually power because of the weird power connectivity or quasi connectivity. So what we need to do is actually send an update through this observer right here to make this piston that's right here realize that it's powered, and so that this signal can go through and break it. And what also happens here is that it can go through and go into this dropper right here, which will also power when this line turns off and this redstone torch turns on. So it shoots it out into this hopper, going down into this dropper right here, where it'll be repowered and shot into the snow block or powdered snow. The reason we shoot it into this powdered snow is to take away all of its velocity and random directionness, so we know it will go directly down into the correct slice. And one more note is that when this repowers, it will also repower this dispenser, shooting it out into this block right here and allowing more items to flow down. Now, the hopper locking here is super simple. It's just this this lever right here powering this block, which powers this redstone dust, which powers this line or this hopper right here, this hopper right here, and this hopper right here, because it powers this block, so it powers this hopper. Powering this redstone wire will be on, so it'll power this hopper, and it will power this block, which will power this hopper. The next one is right here, where it powers this line and powers this block. So this redstone wire right here will power this dispenser, as well as locking all of these hoppers. And this block right here will lock this hopper, and this hopper. And this hopper gets locked from when this red concrete gets powered and powers this dropper right here, locking this top hopper. And yeah, so what this braking signal actually looks like is if I put this through here, you can see it all breaks and it's shot out and gets put through the system. Now we're going to talk about this system now. So what happens is the item or the shulker box full of items actually, so the falls down into right here and goes onto this soul sand. So what happens is that it can go through the soul sand into the hopper. Now, when this redstone repeater blocks this hopper, it'll actually unlock because this piston got powered and this entire slice or stack moved down. allowing this hopper to be unlocked and this hopper allowing the item to go down into this dropper. Now, when this observer moves down, it powers this note block, which will power this dropper to shoot the block into the next dropper. What then happens is this observer will detect that and power this block, which will power this dropper again, shooting it into this slice right here. And then that will do a few loops, but we'll talk about that in a second because that's for the overflow. What then happens is when this got relocked and locked, it will send a signal through this observer line, which will push the shulker box all the way through. So once it makes its way across this observer line, it gets shot into this dropper right here. This dropper doesn't actually get powered, but it makes its way through this line because the hopper pulls the shulker box out from this system. So then it goes down all the way into this chest right here. The reason nothing happens is because this bottom hopper here is locked. And this is another reason I really like the system, is because it's a bufferless box display. So no box is ever buffered in any part of this system. And now we're going to talk about the overflow of the system. Basically, it is overflow protected for this, or for the bulk, I guess you could say, system. How this does it is because it reads out whether there's any items in this hopper whatsoever. So it will power this comparator and power this block or this redstone torch to turn off, which will unlock this hopper, which basically allows for when this item is getting shot across to get pulled down into this hopper immediately, and instead of continuing down the line, it will go into this dropper right here, which will get powered through this signal that we talked about before, where it detects that it's updated or not and shot, and go down into this powdered snow, same as before, to remove any velocity or momentum, and so it can go straight down and land in, not through the packed ice, but on the packed ice, and you'll have water, and this can be your overflow stream. This is only for the bulk or the box sorter instead of any of these SSI filters. These are not overflow protected whatsoever. Or it doesn't collect overflow. I think that's a better way of saying it. So how does this box display work? I think this is a really cool box display, and it's quite simple actually. So basically, this comparator is constantly taking a readout from this box to note that it has any amount of items by powering this block and keeping this note block powered, keeping this piston extended. So I can even go ahead and take out all of these blocks right here, all of these blocks. Even if I leave one item in it, it will still run because the comparator is still taking an output. What will happen then, if as soon as this no longer has any items in it, is this comparator will depower and retract this piston. This will cause this observer to fire and power this piston, which will cause this black stone wall to detect that it's no longer attached to anything, because when a piston fires, it doesn't become a attachable entity for this for the wall to attach to. And that will cause an observer update to this observer right here. Now, there's a couple signals that go through. The first signal, I guess I should say, is this line right here. So these lines right here. So basically, this observer powers because it detects this observer is updated, which will power this observer as well as updating this observer here and powering this. And what this all does is to power this piston to push this slab into breaking the box right here so it can be replaced. And this box will then fall down into this water stream right here and go down into this ice stream right here. Now, once it's been broken, this is where the other signal comes in handy. What happens is this observer will power pushing this piston. So what happens when this piston gets pulsed is it powers this observer right here because of the piston head, and it updates this observer right here, which this will then power this gray concrete, powering this dropper, shooting the item into this dropper right here. And this is kind of the toggle state, I guess you could say, or tracker, that basically tracks whether there is a box in place or not. As you can see, this one has a item in the bottom, so there is a box here, while this one has an item in the top and not in the bottom, and there's no box here. So what happens then is there is a comparator signal that's get taken out, which is turning off this redstone torch. But when this item gets shot up, there is this comparator signal turns off, allowing this redstone torch to power on, which will then power this block, which is very important for later, which will then power this redstone repeater. When powering this redstone repeater, it powers this dropper again to basically say, hey, I've fired and there should be a new shulker box now. And it returns the drop or the item back into the dropper, causing an update in the dropper because it's powered. So this sends two signals, one to this observer right here and one to this observer. This observer because this repeater is now powered, and one to this observer because this dropper got powered. Now this sends a signal to this observer right here, and to this observer right here, and to this observer right here. And this is such a unique scenario because in any regular case, for some reason, you can't power this redstone torch off when a single drop or observer line powers it. For some reason, it has to be so specific that two observer lines have to power it at the exact same tick for this redstone torch to turn off. And which is just a weird mechanic in my opinion, but what this does is it powers or turns off this redstone torch as well as powering this redstone repeater. By powering this redstone repeater, it powers this dispenser to shoot out a new shulker box. But hey, if we don't have a shulker box in this dispenser, how can we shoot it out? Well, that's because this repeater has delay, and before that, what happens is this redstone torch has unpowered and allowed a shulker box from up here to go through these hoppers and into this dispenser, because this redstone torch is powering both of these hoppers right now. And when it unpowers, it also powers this redstone, or not redstone, this observer right here, which will power this redstone repeater right here, which will extend this piston if it's not already out, but it is. And this will cause a update to this observer powering this observer, which will power this block, powering this hopper, allowing only one item to go through. Because if they waited for this redstone torch to return on, then this hopper would allow another item to go through, and then you'd have one in the buffer. And this is why this system has zero buffer whatsoever. Now, why is this block so important? Well, this is to check whether we have boxes to put in this box display. And this comes from a signal coming from this box, which goes to this comparator, which goes to this comparator and powers this block, powering this note block, keeping this piston extended. So if there's no items in the, or no shulker boxes to go into this display right here, then this block won't be here, and that won't allow the signal to go through. So it'll keep the item up here in this dropper right here, as well as make sure that this top stuff doesn't fire, and basically the entire system knows that, okay, there's no box there. The reason this is so good, is because when there is a no comparator output, this redstone torch is defaultly on. So what happens is if I take a box, this box right here, by powering this line on and moving this box, it will allow the system to automatically turn on. So this is why it does not need a turn on signal like most which go through the middle here. What happens is that you put the box and it will detect it and power the system and turn the system on, and now you have a shulker box. And I think that's one of the best features. Like, this is a great haul, but that feature right there is just A-star. I really, it's a pet peeve of mine to have to power on systems to get them to start up, especially if you you have some inconsistencies in your world and some items, and you may run out of boxes, and then you have to go through the pain of trying to restart the system and to get this box to get loaded and things like that. So I really like that system, if you couldn't tell. And yeah, that's pretty much the whole system, and the boxes will go down, or the empty boxes will go down into this line. And yeah, for the hopper locking, there isn't too much hopper locking. Most of it is done within the system itself. This hopper is naturally unlocked, which some people may take issue with, but I don't really mind for what the system is. What happens though is there also is, actually, never mind, these hoppers do lock. What happens is this block right here will power these two redstone lines right here, which will go to these two repeaters, which will power these two the droppers right here, locking those two hoppers, or all four hoppers. So you can see lock, yeah. And this hopper is obviously locked from the previous slice, and yeah, so it is fully hopper locked actually. The UI I think is pretty clean. I mean, some of the design choices I'm not too huge a fan of, like the glass here and slabs instead of stairs, but I really like the accessibility of the boxes, and then the access to the other two items is very clean. Some people may not like that if you take out a box and the system breaks. Okay, wait, no, let me do this box here. And it just leaves the dispenser open like that, but I don't mind too much. It's alright, I can't complain for how great the system is. And yeah, the one really advantage I think about, in my opinion, is having the bulk layer as well as other layers. So it makes it really convenient to do certain items, like especially wood types. Like you could have your logs right here and your planks right here, because those you'll have probably in bulk. Maybe not so much planks, but and then above you can have like the stairs and the slabs and the fences and doors or whatever. So it makes it really convenient to load things, I guess, and to like batch things instead of having like a separate bulk haul with all the logs if you have like a really crazy tree farm. But overall, I think this is a really cool system, and yeah, thank you for watching.